Alex, after a terrific year last year, how does it feel to be making your main draw debut at Melbourne?
It feels great. I'm super excited. Coming in as a main draw player gives a different vibe, especially with the struggles I've had in the past coming here. So super excited and coming in full force.
Aryna Sabalenka is the world number one. She has 4 Grand Slam titles. She is the defending Miami Open champion. By every official metric the sport uses to measure success, she is at the top. And yet somehow a 20-year-old ranked 29th in the world just generated 20 times more press conference views than her. The numbers came out and nobody could look away. Drop a comment below. Do you think Alex Eala's popularity already surpasses Aryna Sabalenka's in terms of global fan engagement, or is the ranking gap still too large to make that argument? Tell us exactly where you stand. Let's start with the number that started this entire conversation, because it is the kind of statistic that does not need much explanation to land. At the 2026 Australian Open, Alex Eala's pre-tournament press conference generated 196,000 views. Aryna Sabalenka's pre-tournament press conference at the same event generated approximately 9,000 views. Same tournament, same format, same basic purpose. A player sitting down to answer questions before competing. One of them is the world number one, the defending champion, the most decorated active player in women's tennis. The other is ranked 29th in the world and had not yet won a WTA title. The player ranked 29th drew 20 times more views. That number is not a rounding error. It is not a platform algorithm quirk that can be explained away with technical factors. It is a direct measurement of how many people actively sought out content featuring each of these two players before a single ball was struck at one of the biggest tournaments in the sport. And the gap between those two numbers tells a story about where the attention in women's tennis is actually concentrated versus where the rankings say it should be. Sabalenka has done everything a tennis player is supposed to do to generate mainstream attention. She has won Grand Slams, 4 of them. She has held the world number one ranking. She has won the Miami Open. She has been one of the defining figures at the top of the women's game for several years. Her game is physically spectacular in a way that generates highlight content. The forehand that pushes opponents off the baseline, the serve that has been completely rebuilt into one of the most effective weapons in the sport. The backhand cross-court winner that she hit 29 times in the Indian Wells final this year. By the traditional metrics of tennis stardom, Sabalenka should be the player who casual fans seek out. She should be the press conference that people queue up online to watch. She should be the name at the top of the viewership conversation, and instead the conversation has been dominated by someone who slid into Coco Gauff's DMs to set up a doubles partnership just 'cause you're able to reminisce being.
Just because you're able to reminisce being in this place again. Last year, obviously, this venue brought a lot of emotions for me, so I'm really happy to be back.
Last I saw you was your 4th round exit in Indian Wells. You told us that you probably feel better the next day. How has it been? You look back at that first run, right, in Indian Wells. What was it like for you? You now put everything in perspective. How was that for you?
Of course, super happy about it. Still a very positive week for me. I had amazing matches. And super good takeaways. So look back on it positively for sure.
You noticed this morning, came out on Instagram, the time you made it. You went back to the Miami Heat. You watched the game. Did you see? You saw Coach Post again.
Yes.
What was that reunion like 3 years later?
It was so cool. Coach Poe watched one of my matches last year. Yeah. So. I haven't seen him since then, but it's always so nice to reconnect with him. He's obviously such an amazing person and very accomplished and very humble. So, good role model for us Filipinos. Yeah.
So, since we have a little bit of time, we wanted to make this a little fun. This is we like to call it your Miami-versary.
Miami-versary. Thank you.
We have a little gift for you.
Salamat.
Open up. This is from
Thank you. Okay.
So, let's open up. And what's inside there? Let's see if you see it. Baliktad.
Baliktad.
There you go. And if you could just grab them one by one.
Okay.
And tell me your first thoughts of that.
Oh, cute.
These are
Okay.
different moments of the past year.
Ay,
From the top. You can start from the
cute. Okay.
top. Can you show us what that is? What is that?
So, this is when I won my first WTA 125 trophy in Guadalajara with the sombrero. Very, very big highlight of last year. Okay.
Next one.
Ooh, I love this one. This was in Rome when I played doubles with the one, the only Coco Gauff. An amazing experience for me. Super fun. And
You weren't sure.
she's just vibes. I shot my shot. I just DM'd her on Insta. Yes, DM.
Okay.
You go for it, guys. And you see, sometimes it works out. So, yeah.
Oh my God.
Let's talk about that golf relationship specifically because it is directly relevant to understanding why Eala's cultural position in the sport is so different from Sabalenka's and why that difference is generating exactly the kind of dynamic that former players have been discussing on podcasts. When I decided she wanted to play doubles at the 2025 Italian Open in Rome, she did not go through official channels or wait for the right introduction. She identified Coco Gauff, world number 3, two-time Grand Slam champion, one of the most recognizable athletes in her sport, and sent her a direct message. The pitch was simple. Let's play doubles in Rome. Gauff said yes. What followed on court was the kind of partnership that works because the two players complement each other naturally. Gauff, by her own admission, described herself as feeling like a deer on ice at the net while Eala covered for her. A two-time Grand Slam champion describing a younger partner as the one covering for her is not a small statement. Gauff also called Eala the MVP of their doubles matches together. Again, from someone with Gauff's resume that carries genuine weight, but the more significant element of the Gauff-Eala relationship is not the doubles partnership. It is the friendship that exists underneath it. Eala described Gauff in her ABS-CBN News interview ahead of Miami as a role model and an amazing person. She talked about the mutual respect between them, the genuine connection that goes beyond being competitors who occasionally share a court. Gauff, for her part, has publicly praised Eala for bringing a new demographic to tennis, acknowledging that Eala's rise is changing who watches the sport and how many of them there are. That is a friendship between two players who are currently on opposite sides of the rankings hierarchy, but who clearly see each other as equals in terms of what they represent for the sport. And it is a friendship that exists openly, publicly, and warmly in interviews, in social media interactions, in the way they talk about each other when the cameras are on. Now, contrast that with Eala's relationship with Sabalenka, which is essentially non-existent in terms of any documented warmth or connection. Sabalenka and Eala have not been partners in anything. They have not been photographed together in casual settings. There are no interviews where either of them has praised the other in personal terms. Their relationship, to the extent one exists at all, is purely the competitive one of two players who are in the same draw at major tournaments and may eventually face each other. That contrast, warm and genuine with Gauff, purely competitive with Sabalenka, maps onto the broader popularity picture in a way that is not accidental. Gauff has been enthusiastically supportive of Eala's rise. She has acknowledged what Eala brings to the sport. She has celebrated the new audiences are bringing in rather than treating that attention as something that dilutes her own profile. That generosity of spirit from one of the sport's biggest stars has reinforced Eala's position within the tennis community and has contributed to the warmth of the conversation around her. Sabalenka's response to everything happening around has been more muted, not hostile, not openly critical. But the absence of any documented enthusiasm for Eala's rise from the sport's #1 player is itself a kind of contrast. When Sam Querrey raised the question on the Nothing Major podcast of whether players might feel jealous of Eala given her extraordinary crowd-drawing power despite a lower ranking, the discussion that followed acknowledged that the dynamic was at minimum awkward for the established hierarchy. John Eisner pushed back on the jealousy framing, but the fact that the question was being asked at all says something about what observers are noticing in the dynamic. The press conference numbers make the dynamic visible in a way that is impossible to dismiss. 196,000 views for a player ranked 29th. 9,000 views for the world #1 at the same tournament before any matches had been played. When you combine that viewership data with what was happening on the ground at every tournament Eala played in 2026, Abu Dhabi attendance records, Melbourne raucous crowds, Dubai standing room only, Indian Wells fans crossing the venue to watch her practice while Sabalenka practiced nearby to a fraction of the audience. You get a picture of a popularity gap that is operating independently of the ranking system. Steve Johnson said it directly on the Nothing Major podcast when asked if Eala was the biggest draw in women's tennis right now. He said yes, not almost not. Arguably, just yes. And when Querrey followed up asking if she was bigger than Sabalenka, Johnson said yes again. Then he described the atmosphere at her matches as insane, as the kind of standing-room-only energy that you do not normally associate with a player outside the top 30. The tournament infrastructure has already responded to this reality in ways that the rankings alone would not have produced. James Blake, the Miami Open tournament director, confirmed that Eala will be on center court throughout the 2026 tournament because, his exact words, "The international interest in her is so high and the fans coming to see her are going to make it feel like a home match. He cannot put her on a smaller court because the crowds would overwhelm it." That is a tournament director making a logistical decision based on fan demand rather than seating. In a sport that has historically allocated its biggest stages strictly according to ranking and title, that kind of exception for a player seated 31st is remarkable, and it represents the tournament acknowledging what the viewership numbers are already showing, that the audience for Eala's matches does not correlate with where she sits in the ranking table. Sabalenka is the top seat at Miami. She gets center court by right of ranking. Eala gets center court by right of crowd demand. Those are two completely different kinds of entitlement, and the coexistence of them at the same tournament at the same time creates exactly the kind of dynamic that makes former players on podcasts wonder out loud about how the established hierarchy feels about what is happening. The Gauff friendship adds another layer to this because Gauff and Sabalenka are themselves competitors at the top of the draw. Gauff at world number 3 and Sabalenka at world number 1 are the two biggest commercial and competitive presences in women's tennis right now by conventional measures. The fact that Gauff has been openly warm and supportive of Eala, while Sabalenka has maintained a more distant stance, creates a subtle but visible alignment. Gauff is with Eala. Sabalenka is with Sabalenka. That alignment matters for how the Miami Open storylines are being framed heading into the tournament. The potential Eala-Sabalenka final is the match everyone is building toward, but the relationship context around that potential matchup is not neutral. And Gauff are friends who have played doubles together and praised each other publicly. Eala and Sabalenka have no documented personal connection beyond the competitive one. If they meet in the final, it will be more than just the 29th seed versus the world number 1. It will be the player with the 20 times bigger press conference audience versus the player who holds the ranking that the audience numbers suggest no longer tells the full story. The WTA chair captured the institutional acknowledgement of this reality in her comments before Miami. She called Eala's fandom incredible coming from across the globe. She placed Eala at the center of the tour's excitement for 2026. Not Sabalenka, who is the defending champion and the world number 1. Not Gauff, who is the second biggest commercial name in the sport. Eala, the player with 196,000 press conference views against someone else's 9,000. The numbers do not lie. The crowds do not lie. The podcast discussions do not lie. And the DM that Eala sent to Gauff, bold enough to reach directly for the partnership she wanted, confident enough to believe the ask would be received positively, is the same quality that is driving every part of her rise. She does not wait for the hierarchy to give her what she wants. She goes and gets it. Sabalenka has the ranking. She has the titles. She has the serve and the forehand and the competitive record that justifies her position at the top of the draw. But in Miami 2026, the player generating the most electricity in the building is seeded 31st, plays doubles with the world number 3, who called her the MVP, describes her friendships as simply girlhood, and pulled 196,000 views on a press conference that the world number 1 could not get close to. The numbers are what they are, and the sport is watching. 20 times more press conference views than the world number 1. A friendship with Coco Gauff built on genuine mutual respect. Center court secured not by ranking but by crowd demand. Alex Eala is rewriting what popularity in tennis looks like, and the numbers make it impossible to argue otherwise. Hit that like button, subscribe for more, and drop your Miami prediction in the comments right